Chris Taylor has a question. Since 1984, conservatives have been caricatured as the Baptist preacher from Footloose. You're darn right about that. For those of you who haven't seen it or don't remember, I'm pretty sure it was John Lithgow played that character, right? He was the guy who said no dancing, no happiness of any kind. Basically, that's what Christians are, no happiness allowed under any circumstances. If you could reimagine Footloose for a modern remake, as seems to be the trend in movies, what would you make different? What would you leave the same? And then there's an asterisk on the preacher from Footloose that says, except when they are caricatured as mean old Mr. Potter. All I remember about Footloose, Dave, is I saw it when it came out in a theater. I liked it very much. I remember Kevin Bacon was very appealing in that. One of the things I like most about, it just goes to show you how asleep I was. If I'd seen Footloose today, I'm sure I would have reacted very differently. I liked it, and I wasn't much interested in politics, didn't much care. So I just thought the guy was just a villain, and it never occurred to me that, just once again I was being programmed in terms of who to like, who to hate, and what belief system to value and what belief system to despise. And I just sat in there and listened to the music and had a good time, a lot of laughs. And some little part of my brain came out of that movie theater saying on a little tiny little level, oh, those damn Christians, those damn Baptists, why can't they just leave people alone? And that's how little most people know about things, as little as I knew about things. This is funny how all these things are tied together. This is how it works. This is why I show you pictures of things like spaceships flying over rocks. People get the message, but they don't know they're going to get the message. And they don't know that they're getting the message. They just get it. Forget this particular video game. Video games, I think quite a while ago now, 7, 8, 9 years ago, if not more, as I recall, the annual budget on video games was larger than the annual budget on feature films. And I'm unaware of anything more than a handful of video games that do not have characters that are armed in one way or another. And you've got millions, tens and tens of millions of people, if not more, maybe hundreds of millions in this country, certainly hundreds of millions of them worldwide, are walking around in these virtual worlds with weapons, shooting everything in front of them. And just if you just go look at, I think I mentioned this last week, go look at Grand Theft Auto, go look at like Best Kills Grand Theft Auto 5. You'll see a world that gets ever more photorealistic, ever more like the real world. And Grand Theft Auto 5 is fantastically good looking game. And basically, unless I've missed something, Grand Theft Auto means you just get to walk up to somebody and shoot them in the back of the head and steal their car. And then, run over prostitutes or people on the beach. And it's fun because the graphics are very good and the physics are fantastic. So when you hit somebody, they go flying through the air and they tumble authentically. And when you execute a hostage, guess what? They fall down the stairs just like they would in real life. And I'm not aware that anybody is in that world trying to influence the people in that world in the way that the people in the real world influenced me and stopped me from becoming one of those psychopaths. I am very, very worried about people who never got any kind of adult correction before they got into the video game world. And there's one interesting thing I've been thinking about, a means of bringing this up about something. Again, this is not about this particular game, but I hadn't really realized it, but I think it actually is a relatively important insight. When these games, these immersive games, not like looking down at, Donkey Kong or Space Invaders or any of that stuff, and not like one of these little fantasy, games where you go in locked rooms and all that. When the first of these first-person shooters came out, it might have been Castle Wolfenstein. If not, it was something very close to that. It's the first time you're actually in the world, and you're looking and you're going through the world, and you got a gun and you're shooting the bad guys. And that's called a first-person shooter because the world looks as it would look to you if you were in that world. And guys like me and people my age, and I'm about the oldest guy in the video game wave, love first-person shooters if we're going to play. A flight sim is a first-person game. This is what it looks like to fly the fighter jet or the airliner. But what I see more and more and more is virtually all of these games now, the new ones that are really, really, really doing well, they're not played as first-person shooters. They're played as third-person shooters. And what that means is, instead of you going through a trench or walking through a jungle or climbing a mountain as it would look to you, you see your character from behind your shoulder, and you see your character rolling and jumping and so on, and you're looking down at the character you're playing as that character walks through the world. And it occurred to me that this is not only a result of the selfie generation. They want to watch themselves. They want to watch themselves do things. But it's worse than that. I think that as more and more of these kids grow up, more and more of these games are becoming third-person shooters because these kids have never experienced first-person anything. You know, I mean, I'm not joking. I mean, a lot of these kids have never, ever ridden a bike. They don't know what the world looks like in first person. In fact, they don't know what the world looks like at all. In many cases, obviously I'm generalizing, but in many cases now, you deal with kids who are 17, 18, 20 years old now. Their entire lives have been led in online and inside of video games. And since the video game is not meant to be real, what do you want the real perspective for? They don't see it as a simulation of reality the way that we did. They see it as it's a selfie generating machine. Look at me go. Here I am jumping across this. Here I am rolling. Here I am diving. Here I am. Look at the cool pose I've got. And I find that interesting. And I find it a little disturbing. TG Gecko says that third person incorporates peripheral vision better than first. No question. I'm sure you can play a better game. Maybe you can play a better game. I'm convinced you can aim better as a first person than you can looking over my own shoulder. But put that aside, because I put a little target thing out there for you, so you don't have to look at the world from inside your own head. It's getting to be a third person world out there. Dave Wellman said it's a result of console game design. That's fine, but console game design is driven by what people want to play, and I understand it's a cycle, but in any event, I look at these new games coming out, the games for 17 and 18, and the graphics are astonishing. And I haven't seen many of them first person. It always seems to be third person. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting thing. Let's see, moving on.